with Light of the Infinite story time. This is my third book, The Sound of Illumination, and we're in the chapter of finding grace in time for the Torah portion, MO. So going through a breakup can be one of the most difficult things to endure. It's a separation in what felt like a divine union, a heart shattered into a million pieces. But we have to find a way to trust that it is for our own good, and what's truly aligned will arise at the right time. We have to shift our focus from what's lost and lean into the faith that whatever is meant to be will be. We never know what our Creator has in store for us. So when you're like going through these, I wrote this after I was going through a breakup, this chapter. And when you're in that space, especially when you're led by fear and lack of faith, and you're thinking, this is the one, and now I lost it, and what if I don't find another person like this? You know, it's this sort of constricted consciousness where you don't realize the infinite potential in the universe, and you think that this one thing was it, and it gets scary to think that, what if I lose the one thing, my one chance, my one person, my one chance for happiness, whatever it is. So that fear brings sadness, depression, regret, and all of these different things that we fear of not coming to us as blessings for the future, and not receiving that which might be more aligned or what we're supposed to be moving toward anyway. But when we lean into the faith that it's all happening as it should be, and if this wasn't working out, then of course there's a reason that it wasn't working out. So it's for the best that there is that separation or that breakup, and then we can move into a space of something that's more aligned for ourselves. And that's basically when we move away from fear and we move toward faith, then those blessings actually can manifest, because it's that sort of law of attraction and this idea that let me open myself up to the infinite possibilities and potential that are in store for me, and let me call those in from a space of being aligned with Hashem, with God, but also in this space of positivity, love, and light, and all these things that attract these blessings that are basically in store waiting to come our way anyway. So that's the idea of moving from this sort of constricted consciousness and this space of constriction, fear, anxiety, and all of that, and moving toward the redemptive state, that which brings in the redemption, which is seen through love, light, opportunity, blessings, and all that. So all of life in various ways, even if we don't fully feel it, is an element of heartbreak, since at all times we are somewhat separate from the Shechinah, the indwelling of the divine feminine. How to elevate in exile is a part of the process of Sefirot HaOmer, which is what we're in right now. This is the time and the counting from Passover to Shavuot, which is also this time that we can elevate these elements within ourselves that are mirrored in the 7 weeks, which are mirrored in the 7 emotional attributes of the Sefirah, or the Sefirot, which is the tree of life. So we're going to go into that a bit here, rectifying each level of the 7 Sefirot of Chesed, loving kindness, through Malchut, kingship, and the definitions in English are always different because it's hard to put these things into English words. We learned that the Jews in Egypt were on the 49th level of impurity, a step away from the bottom, the 50th level of impurity, tied to our animalistic soul and selves. As everything has a balance and every potential for bad has the potential for good, we also learn that in these 49 days, Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, reached the very highest level. The Jews were on the 49th level of holiness, tied to our godly souls and selves. When they received the Torah, one step away from the highest level, the 50th gate, level of holiness, which is the revelation at Sinai, which Kabbalistically, 50th gate of wisdom and understanding, and where we bring in the redemptive state, seen as the Mashiach as well. We are now in the midst of counting the 49 days of Sefirot HaOmer, from the second night of Pesach until Shavuot. So from Passover till Shavuot, where we receive the Torah anew. The Omer is also referred to as 7 Shabbatot, and as Rabbi Nachman of Breslov says, we do it with a Pesach, which means an open mouth. We are speaking spirituality into existence, mirroring the journey of Bnei Israel in the desert, who spent the 49 days in spiritual preparation. With each day and week in these 7 weeks, we are tasked with transcending our physical constraints and reaching redemption. Time is a figment of a fractured world, but it is the world that we live in, and to remove the layers of klippah, the shells around us that conceal the godly light, we need to go through the process of these 7 weeks of counting, of meditation, of moving through 7 Shabbatot until reaching the 50th day when we receive the Torah anew. Sefirot HaOmer is a journey in refining the 7 emotional attributes outlined in the 10 Sefirot. Chesed, loving kindness. Gvura, justice, strength, discipline. Tiferet, beauty, harmony, compassion. Netzach, endurance, victory. Hod, humility, empathy. Yesod, bonding or foundation. And Malchut, which is kingship, which we spoke about. And just to let you know, we're in my third book. This is The Sound of Illumination, which parallels the third book of the Torah, so Vayikra, and it's in the Light of the Infinite series, which you can get anywhere, but probably the easiest is Amazon Prime. We're on page 111, the chapter Finding Grace in Time for the Torah portion, MO. The root of any of our own enslavements is the negative side or distorted use of these emotions. The 7 weeks of 7 days counting and moving through these emotions are meant as a time to reflect, be mindful, and try to be in tune with the emotions in a healthy way and remove any dissonance, clouding clarity of love. The distortion of an emotion is when it's not used for ultimate good, and since emotions are multidimensional, each of the 7 attributes are composed of all 7. As such, day 1 is Chesed of Chesed, day 2, Gevura of Chesed, day 3, Tiferet of Chesed, day 4, Netzach of Chesed, day 5, Hod of Chesed, day 6, Yesod of Chesed, and then finally, day 7, Malchut of Chesed. So we're going through all of the elements within each one. And this continues on day 1 of week 2, which would be Chesed of Gevura, and moving through them as well. And so on. To fully refine any one emotion, which would, in theory, take 7 days, instead, we count 7 cycles of 7 days to sort of rectify, do this tikkun on every element of every emotion. In this time, we try to transcend our limited view of our physical reality and tap into our spirit that's beyond these constraints. We say the bracha, the blessing, and speak the cycle into existence with kavanah, with heartfelt intention. The Talmud teaches a person's prayer is not heard on high unless he places his emotion or his soul in his hands. This is a time to tap into transcendence. The klipot, these shells or the layers that conceal the godly truth and the ultimate truth that manifest all around us, represent the external, mirroring the negativity or egocentricity that keeps us from connecting to the internal and our true selves as creations with a divine purpose, which connects us to the divine light. It's this concealment that allows free will. It's the truth that is hidden that we have to fight to remain in, to continue to do good and feel oneness. This negativity or ego is like the shell of a fruit. It does serve to protect the fruit, just as there are times it is useful for our own self-preservation. But it too must be removed to get to the sweetness. Focusing on the shell while ignoring its core will deceive us every time, leaving us holding the peel instead of its precious fruit. We have to remove our layers of ego and negativity to get to the root of our being and purpose, to get to a redemptive state, and to receive the Torah. Just last week, as I contemplated klipa, this shell that conceals the godly light that we're talking about as a concept and how it plays a part in our lives, I wrote down this poem that went something like this. This shell covering your magic, if you can only see what I see, full of life that can't survive up here. The inside of you under layers of fear, a fishbowl, a figment, one in your mind. Peel, push, feel, rush inward. Your outside is created. Dig deeper to being a creation, sweet and pure as fruit, but your shell has toughened. Peel it all away until you see it was all a trick you played. Sefirot HaOmer, this counting, this time of the counting, and rectifying these emotional attributes and all the elements within them, it's an opportunity for us to peel away the layers of the shell and move toward our inner essence, connecting to our godly soul, instead of limiting our perceptions and actions to our animal soul that often leads us. Moshe took Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, from Mitzrayim, from Egypt, ancient Egypt, out of Meitzar, which is the root word of it, which means constriction. The definition of exile, spiritual narrowness and constrictions, tzimtzumim, as we say in Kabbalah. He brought them to the border of the promised land. His purpose was fulfilled, and it's now our task to leave our own Mitzrayim, our own enslavements and constrictions, that which holds us back from reaching our potential and ascending to our personal promised land. To bring the Messiah, the Mashiach, we have to make a redemption that is prati, private, personal, before we could see the final redemption, which is klali, which is communal and public. It's on all of us, which is why in the pasuk, in the verse commanding the counting, it's written, yourselves. As stressed in the Talmud, each individual should count. So the verse reads, you shall count 7 full weeks for yourselves, from the day following the day of rest, from the day on which you bring the Omer as a wave offering, count 50 days until the days following the 7 weeks, which is the Torah, which is represented by the redemptive state and receiving the Torah anew. Shabbat in Hebrew is etymologically related to the word lishbot, which means to rest. Hashem commands us to rest in order to rise. If we hope to rise above nature and elevate our spirit, we have to rest from trying continuously to control the physical world. If we want to transcend and connect to our soul, to our body, we have to pause our pursuits and connect to our purpose. Sefirah is a count and practice of being mindful of the time around 7 opportunities, 7 Shabbatot, to do exactly that, in hopes of doing our part from below, transcending the animalistic aspects of ourselves and connecting to the divine within us, peeling away the layers of klipa, these shells that cover the godly light, so that Hashem, God, answers from above on the 50th day with the key to redemption, the Torah. In these Torah portions, the word Shabbat is, in relation to the festivals, is recurring. But as we know, the festivals are less strict than Shabbat. No work may be done on Shabbat, but one is allowed to prepare food on the festivals. The ramifications of not observing Shabbat are far greater than those of not observing any of these festivals. But because the festivals are also referred to as Shabbat, the potential for spiritual connection and unification is beyond measure, because the special space these days hold in time, their separation from elements of space and creation itself. You have probably gotten a sense reading these chapters, if you have this book or any of my 5 books, how much I love Shabbat. Just feeling connected to Hashem, disconnecting from the everyday world, meditating on having been created. It's an incredible, ineffable feeling. In these Torah portions of Emol and the ones prior to it, Hashem gives us the commandment of Shabbat and of the festivals, which are also referred to as Shabbat, a holy occasion, a Sabbath to the Lord in all your dwelling places. We are commanded to join in a Shabbat to Hashem. So what is this all about? We learn from the Holy One that words create worlds. In the beginning, Hashem, God, spoke existence into being. Tefillah, prayer, is our daily method of emulating the Creator, speaking spirituality into reality. But on Shabbat and the festivals, we can focus on just that, without the constant distractions pulling us away from this unification. Your phone, driving somewhere, turning on the TV, going on your computer, doing work, all of that stuff is gone when you're in the space of Shabbat and Lishbot. It's taught that on Shabbat we gain an neshama yetera, so it's this concept of this additional soul that we receive. And it's this additional neshama, soul, allows a person to understand the mysteries of the Torah. So their tefillot, their prayers, and learning are elevated. The Kabbalah teaches about 5 worlds, which are a model for living a whole and balanced life, experiencing harmony between the body, mind, heart, and spirit. Adam HaKadmon, some people don't count this as one and say it's 4 worlds. Primordial man, will, luminous light. And then the ones that everybody agrees on. Atzilut, emanation, mind, spirit, soul. Bria, creation, thought, intellect. Yitzera, formation, heart, feeling, speech. Asiya, action, body, physicality. And I remember when I was doing my talk with Deepak Chopra, I remember he got so excited talking about other ancient wisdom that pulls from this Kabbalistic tradition and these Hebrew words, and he was reading them, and he was showing how similar it is and how Avraham sent this wisdom and his teaching and the spirituality out into the world, and it got basically, it incorporated and blessed into these different parts of the universe and brought into their spiritual practice. And it was just amazing to see the correlation and the root of all this stuff and coming back to the Kabbalah and the sources and these Hebrew words. It was amazing. So if you haven't seen it, just go on YouTube and type in Deepak Chopra and Eretz Safar and you'll see it. We did it around my second book, The Exodus of Darkness. So the Hebrew word for universe is olam, and it's derived from the same root, alam, which means to be concealed. So elem is concealed. This is to hint that Hashem, who is king of the universe, has hidden himself in the universe. These worlds above act as garments for Hashem's light, so concealing. As King David sings of creation in Tehillim and Psalms, you have dressed yourself in majesty and splendor. You have covered yourself with light like a garment. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, one of my favorite writers, teachers, rabbis, teaches the 5 universes are often explained in terms of the parallels at the human level. Man's innermost will and volition corresponds to the universe of Adam HaKadmon. The level of preconception or undifferentiated mind corresponds to Atzilut. The process of thought corresponds to the universe of Bria, speech, and communication parallel the universe of Yitzhak, and finally action corresponds to Asiya, creating something, doing something. Rabbi Shalom Sharabi points out that on Shabbat, the world of Atzilut, emanation, shines into the world of Bria, creation, meaning that the intellect is imbued with divine consciousness that transcends intellect. When we study Torah on Shabbat, we can actually sense God's presence in it. So it's this opportunity to reach this completely different level, and basically this level that is above time and above constrictions. And that's why instead of creating and trying to emulate the creator and controlling everything and being on our phone and doing work and jumping in our car and running from this place to that place, in this time which is beyond space, which is Shabbat, we're actually moving away from many of those things, which are elements that keep us distracted and conceal the godly light and make us think that we're in charge of everything. So on Shabbat, it's an opportunity to pull away from all that and realize that it's all in God's hands. We're creations. He's the creator. And we can just flow and exist and be present. And it's this meditative and mindful space that we could be in. So that's the opportunity that we could reach this elevated space that is beyond time, which is what Shabbat is. I think Avraham Joshua Heschel articulates the power and feeling of Shabbat best many times in his book, The Sabbath, which is sort of written in this incredible way in English, but it's bringing out all these Kabbalistic concepts. He used to spend so much time on every sentence. My dad went to JTS when he was the professor and rabbi there, and I'm obsessed with his book. So he has Between God and Man, God in Search of Man, Man in Search of God. But The Sabbath is probably his most popular book. And this one particular passage that jumps out at me reads as such: all days of the week must be spiritually consistent with the day of days. All our life should be a pilgrimage to the seventh day. The thought and appreciation of what this day may bring to us should be ever present in our minds. For the Sabbath is the counterpoint of living, the melody sustained throughout all agitations, and vicissitudes which menace our conscious, our awareness of God's presence in the world. Rambam, Maimonides, and Ibn Ezra point out that the word Shabbat is used to describe a full week, and not just Shabbat itself. In Vayikra, the Torah refers to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot as Shabbaton, and as Shabbaton, a grand Shabbat. We see that Shabbat and its power for connection and unification is constantly commanded to us. In this Torah portion, in this parasha, Hashem tells Moshe, God tells Moses to speak to the children of Israel and say to them, Hashem's appointed festivals, which you shall designate as callings of holiness, these are my appointed festivals. The entire Torah is callings of holiness, occasions to access what I like to call the cheat codes to holiness. We have previously learned about making time itself holy by partnering with God in observing Shabbat. In this chapter, we learn how to designate time and space as holy outside of Shabbat as well. As we read, for 6 days, work may be performed, but on the seventh day, it is a complete rest day, a holy occasion. You shall not perform any work. It is a Sabbath to the Lord in all your dwelling places. So this is what we read in Kiddush. Shesh yamim taseh melacha, v'yom hashvi Shabbat Shabbaton mikra kadesh, kol melacha lo tasu, Shabbat hi lo b'chol mishvotechem. So, rather, this part is what we say during the day. Ela moadei Hashem mikra kodesh asher tikotam b'moadam. So these are the Lord's appointed holy days, holy occasions, which you shall designate in their appointed time. So anybody joining now, we're in my third book, Sound of Illumination, from my Light of the Infinite series. It's 5 books to parallel the 5 books of the Torah. So we're in the third one. These 2 sentences in Amor demonstrate the interrelationship between the finite and the infinite in such a perfect way. First, we are reminded that Shabbat's designation of time is from Hashem and remains consistent, a taste of the infinite given to us in this physical dwelling in time and space on the 7th day of each week. The sages call Shabbat 1/60th of the world to come. Then we are introduced to the festivals, the high holidays, which act like Shabbat for Hashem, and we are tasked with designating the proper time for the holy encounters with Hashem. So festivals are determined by us and determined by the new moon. This power that we are imbued with to sanctify time is made even clearer when we think about how those times are designated. The dates of the festivals are always correlated with the new moon, Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is determined by the rabbinical court in Jerusalem when two witnesses see a sliver of the moon, come before the court and say, Mikudash, Mikudash, sanctified, sanctified. Then, as a community, we give thanks for the reappearance of the moon by reciting the Kiddush Levana, the sanctification of the new moon blessing. These rituals that are grounded in our physical experience will literally determine when Hashem's festival will happen. So we have this active role in this, which is mind-blowing. This restoration of our spiritual selves is also central to the rituals of the festivals. The high holiday festivals fall on either the 30th or the 31st from the previous new moon. The exact timing is determined by us as a part of the living Torah. Unlike Shabbat, which has been set since the beginning and will be consistent until the days of Kulo Shabbat, which is the Mashiach time, Messianic era, which is entirely Shabbat. So it's Kulo Shabbat, entirely Shabbat, all Shabbat, and Kulo Tov, which is all goodness. There's no differentiation. There's no imagination, which is sort of manifested or represented by darkness. Really, light dispels darkness. Truth dispels hate and lies and darkness, because all of that is the koach hamedama, is the power of the imagination. We see it in this reality, but it's not actually true, and it's not actually real, so it will disappear. Our sages refer to that time as the Messianic era, when darkness will be fully transformed into light. Rashi points out that the commandment for festivals immediately follow a reminder and repetition of the holiness of resting. It's taught that whoever profanes the festivals by working on them is considered as though he profaned Shabbat, and whoever observes the festivals by resting on them is considered as though they observed Shabbat. It's interesting that this Torah portion, as is the case in the rest of the Torah, the festival of Shavuot, is not referred to as the time when we receive the Torah. We know that Shavuot correlates with the revelation at Sinai only from our oral tradition, Torah Sheba'al Peh. Akedah gives two important perspectives on why this is the case. The first is seen in the fact that the existence of Hashem isn't mentioned in the 613 mitzvot, commandments, because had there been no Hashem, God, to command them, there would be no reason to observe them. It's a given that they come from God. The same applies to the giving and receiving of the Torah. The Torah is the first fundamental of Judaism, and the very fact that thousands of years later we observe it means it's given and that it was received. That's given. We understand that. The Torah doesn't need to remind us. Furthermore, the receiving of the Torah doesn't depend on time, unlike other mitzvot, commandments. The Torah is in fact received at all times. As it's written, this book of the Torah shall not depart from your mouth, and you shall meditate on it day and night. In the Torah, and in this Torah portion, Shavuot is called the holiday of first fruits and the wheat harvest. It's designated as a thanksgiving to the Creator who gives food to all. We see this in the following psukim, verses. And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you have sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering, when you have gathered in your labors out of the field, and you shall observe the feast of weeks, and the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering. 7 weeks shall you number unto you. Begin to number of the 7 weeks from such time as you begin to put the sickle to the wheat. We do receive the Torah on this day in cyclical time, but the Abarbanel sees this as coincidental to the festival, as the Torah itself is its own daily and perpetual remembrance. Rabbi David Tzvi Hoffman says that it is not written that Shavuot is the time of receiving the Torah because the vision of Sinai cannot be made into a concrete symbol. The interplay between nature, creation, and spirituality is the constant dance of these Torah portions, and something in which we all struggle to find grace. The Abarbanel illustrates the mindful symbolism of these festivals. At Pesach, Passover, we are commanded to bring the Omer of barley, a grain normally used as animal fodder, which represents where we were as people at Pesach, at Passover. We hadn't yet received the Torah, and were still trapped in the finite, animalistic ways of Egypt, ancient Egypt. On Shavuot, we are commanded to bring a mincha chadash, a new crop, symbolizing the new spirit that Hashem, God, infused in us by giving us the Torah. And the counting of the Omer that we're doing between these two offerings is symbolic of our longing to achieve the clarity and connectedness with the infinite, to not be stuck in nature and a place of finitude. Shabbat and the festivals are moments in time to separate oneself from trying to conquer nature and tap into becoming supernatural, above nature, limitless, tapped into our Creator. These are the moments that concealment is peeled back just a sliver, affording us the opportunity to unify with Hashem, with God, who is beyond space, time, and creation itself. Our character is weighed down by the harsh realities and klipot in this natural world. It's by virtue of these 7 cycles of 7 and the ritual of Sefirot HaOmer, this counting, that we go through the process of refining our own character that brings us closer to this 50th gate of holiness and understanding. 50 being the number and notion that surpasses the natural world. The 49 days of working through the constriction of our animal soul to connect to our godly soul and the infinite light brings the redemptive light itself. So this, again, is a chapter, Finding Grace in Time, in my 3rd book, Light of the Infinite. Thank you so much for joining. I'm coming to you live in the Music City Hotel in San Francisco. I just played a show here last night with Kosher Dills. And then tonight I'm doing a comedy show, I think at the Boom Boom Room with Value Culture. And so hopefully see you there. If not, I'll see you back in LA or in Israel in a few weeks as I bring Laughter to the Heartbreak over there and then do a bunch of different, we're doing an event, Solace, this sort of healing meditative event with Moshe Feiglin with JTLV in Tel Aviv. And then I'm doing a spiritual retreat in Tzfat. I'm speaking in Efrat, doing something in Yerushalayim, Modin. So yeah, just you can keep up with all that stuff at eresafar.com/events. And love you guys. Shabbat Shalom. And see you soon.